have an emptiness, sometimes unanswered questions. One of the questions, of course, is, did they have to die? Could we have done something different? And will there be something better because of their sacrifice? And although we have the members from the 13, I would ask that just for a moment, those who are here who are also Gold Star family members, please rise. Thank you. They've given me a lot of opening remarks about accountability and so on, and that's somewhat what I'm known for, but that's not what today is about. Today is about the members of the Army, the Navy, Marine Corps, who deployed and went in harm's way, many of them at the last minute, to help with the evacuation. We are here in the home of the 2-1, but the fallen included not only those, but 183 souls, many of whom, virtually all of whom, were in that position because they were trying to get to the aircraft and be evacuated. Had this not happened, most, if not all of them, would be here in the United States today enjoying a beautiful sunny day. In the years that I've been honored to serve, I've grown to know a lot about our Marines. And so even though I'm an old Army guy, very old Army guy, I want to say something special to here. And the families have already been aware of this. When we let the base, Camp Pendleton, know that you were coming, all that they asked was, what can we do? How can we make this better for the families? No reservation, and I know many of you tomorrow will have a private ceremony at the base, and that's the right thing to do, and I want to make it clear that the men and women of the military stand ready to do anything they're allowed to do for your families now and in the future. And one of the goals that I now have is to make sure that the rules and regulations allow those military personnel and the rest of the entities, the Veterans Administration and so on, to be able to do that. Some would ask why 2 years later we're having this hearing. I would only say that if it was 70 years later, but your voices had not been heard, it would still be time to have it. And I make no apologies for the fact that we're doing it today. I only apologize that we didn't do it sooner and that we don't do this more often so that all would know. Again, I want to thank the mayors and our assemblywomen who are here today. Let me make it clear, we're not here to make speeches. This will be the last other than short closing remarks that I make. We're here to hear from you. It's a free forum. It's sort of like when they come and they testify in Congress. It's not about Q&A. It's about what you want to tell us. And so I do have an order that people believe we should go in, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say that each of you get up when you're comfortable, come say what you want to say. If you think of something after you sit back down and you need to get back up again, please feel free to. This is your day. This is about what you know that the world doesn't know, and I would ask that you take this opportunity to make it public. This is being simulcast and it will be recorded, and as a result it will be part of the official record of the Congress, and hopefully something that the great-grandchildren will all have to remember their loved ones by. So with that, who wants to be first? Okay, thank you.
I want to get mine done so I can listen to everybody else's and be able to listen. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Congressman Issa, thank you. And thank you to your team. They're wonderful, and thank you all for being here. I am Kelly Barnett, Staff Sergeant Darren Taylor Hoover's mom. He goes by Taylor. Thank you, California, for having us. I know you have your political issues, but I love California. California to me is my son. He served for 11 years. He was in California for 11 years. I was out here as much as I could. I love it here, not just because of the food, but I love it here. And I thank you for giving us this voice and letting us kick this off. We haven't had one, and we got one, so thank you. Taylor and I have this thing where we watch a lot of movies. We love to do movie quotes, so you're going to hear a lot of those. And if you know the movie, then we can be friends. So, and a quote. It was mine first, but he kind of took it over. It's fear causes hesitation, and hesitation will cause your worst fears to come true. And my worst fear has come true, and I have been hesitant about speaking out, and I'm not doing that anymore. So every opportunity I can, you're going to see this mug, but it's for my son. I'm going to be brave and tell you about my kid. He's an amazing kid, and I want you to know that I'm not a victim. We're not victims. We're parents to some mighty heroes. I want you to know that. Okay. Taylor's my firstborn, my only son. He's the first grandson, first grandkid on both sides. Hero to our whole family. I have 7 siblings, and we have between us like 30 kids. So there's a lot of us, and he's the hero. He's the oldest. He's the hero, the light in the room, the protector, the one everyone always went to for advice or for a funny story or to hear a funny story. Taylor had this amazing ability to, when someone needed him or when someone was speaking with him, he would, the rest of the world would fade, and he would give that person his whole attention, his whole, everything possible to make sure that person knew that they were important and that they counted. I wish I had that ability. I really do. What a cool dude. He definitely was. The Marine Corps was always his goal since he was little, 6 years old and up. That's all he talked about. Sorry, Congressman, no Army men. He only played with Marines. That's right. He went to boot camp September 13th, 2010, and we had this talk. I told him, you made this choice. This is going to be hard. You're going to do it. You're going to do it 110%, and I don't want to hear any, I said some other words, but I don't want to hear any griping about it. I said, if they beat you down in boot camp, you just pretend like I'm looking over you telling you to get up, and again, some choice words. I said, I'd rather them beat you down there than something else happened to you somewhere else where someone else tried to beat you down. And that was always a thing between us. He would always tell his friends, and it was just a thing he said had helped him through boot camp and SOI and his first deployment. So boot camp, SOI, he deployed 5 times, 3 of them to Afghanistan. His first deployment, he had, I don't know if it was a pleasure, but he had the opportunity to be with some of the last of the real war horses over there. They were his sergeants. And he became such an awesome man, an awesome machine, such a good person, and that's where he learned his leadership skills and basically his life skills. I'm so thankful to those people and to the Marine Corps for what they did for my son. He always took care of his business. He took care of his family. He took care of his friends. He took care of his men. He, like all of us, he experienced a few years back some very traumatic things in his life, tested him, and he decided that it wasn't going to beat him, and he didn't let it beat him. He kind of enacted his motto, movement is life. To him, that meant you keep going, you keep pushing. You fall down 10 times, you get up 100 times, you keep going. And he did. He came out wiser, stronger, completely focused on what life really meant and what he wanted to do in the Marine Corps. He loved his family. He loved his friends. He loved his animals, his 2 dogs, Aries and Bella. And he loved his men. He didn't have any women that served under him, so that's why I say he loved his men with a deep passion. Gearing up for this deployment, he would call me every morning on his way to Pendleton, and he would tell me, Mom, I'm frustrated, I'm worried, I don't know if I'm getting through to these guys, I don't know if they're going to be ready, I don't know if they're going to be prepared. They're doing this or that. You ask me later if you want to hear some funny stories about what they were doing. There's some sad ones, but there's some really funny ones too. But he would, ask me, Mom, what do I do? So we'd pray together. I'd tell him to keep pushing, keep going. And he did. He would pray, and he would ask his old war horses, for advice, put their advice into play. This went on for a few weeks. And he called me one morning, and he was just in the best mood. And he told me, Mom, they're doing so good. They got it. I'm so proud of them. He's like, don't worry about me. These guys, I got total confidence in them. We're going to be great. He celebrated in their victories. He wanted them to be as good or better than him at all of his skills and all of his abilities that he taught them. And when they excelled, that's how he celebrated in that. He was a true leader. I know that from the time he was born. He always led. But he led by his heart and his knowledge. He never led by his title, ever. That never went to his head. He didn't like the titles. But he always gave his whole heart to everything that he did. Like I said, he was deployed 5 times. His first 2 deployments were to Afghanistan, back in the muck when that was going on. His last one, of course, was in August of 2021. I thought this was, going to be a piece of cake deployment compared to those where I prayed every day, numerous times for his safety. I got complacent, and that wasn't the case. And I beat myself up every day for that. But I do know that he was prepared, and what happened for a reason. Unfortunate, but I know that he was where he was for a reason. On this deployment, his platoon, 28 of them, were chosen for a special mission to be on a ship, the Lewis B. Puller, which is funny because that's one of his nicknames was Chesty because he was so motivated. He had a few others, Tactical Tailor and Hoof Dog. They called him all kind of things, but he was on the ship. There was 139 people on that ship. It was a special mission. It was at the Strait of Hormuz and Iran, so you know what was going on over there at the time. It's going on still. But he was on that mission from May till the end of July. There's 28 Marines, and like I said, 139 people total, 28 Marines for their security, and the rest were sailors and people from one of the 3-letter agencies. Starts with a C. End of July, they left this ship and went back to join the rest of 2-1. And then he left for Afghanistan August 15th, August 16th. His 3rd time on Afghan soil. His concern began the moment that he landed and saw what he saw. His words were chaos, no communication, lack of leadership. He said he'd never seen anything like it. And like I said, he was in Afghanistan 2 times before. He told me, Mom, I now know that the command cares nothing for us. My son, these 12 others left this earth thinking that their command cared nothing for them. The wounded feel that their command felt nothing for them. The survivors felt that their command felt nothing for them. I feel this as well. After seeing their friends die, picking them up off the ground, sending them off, then being told to destroy everything at the airport, they were told, you got to clean up the airport. We can't leave it dirty for the Taliban. They had to clean up the airport. What kind of disrespect? What kind of hatred for our military? What kind of mess? Confusion, deceit, lost, angry, sad, heartbroken, and disgusted. These are the feelings that the service members felt and are still feeling. These are the feelings I'm feeling. Taylor's dad's feeling. His sisters, his family, his friends. We were told lies, given incomplete reports, incorrect reports, total disrespect. There were gunshots. All I wanted to know where my kid was, where he fell. How long did he last? Did he fight? I was told to my face he died on impact. That's not true. The only reason that I know this is because witnesses told me the truth. I was lied to and basically told to shut up, that that's the way it was. Not true. He lived for a little while, but not on impact. He was giving out his ammo. He tied a tourniquet around his leg. I don't understand the reasoning for that lie. It makes no sense. Other than the fact that, did they really even do an investigation? Did they talk to witnesses? I don't know. Please don't be distracted by the mess that you're seeing on TV. Aliens, who cares? Are they real? I don't know. If they are, I got some people. I got a list of people. Please take them. Please take them. I can read that list to you now. Biden, the Biden administration, Blinken, Milley, Austin, Whited, Ball. Unfortunately, there's more. That's just the ones that I'm focused on at this moment. Incompetent, cowards, evil. Some are a few of those, some are all of those. I want justice. I want accountability. Why would they just not say, oh, we made a mistake, our plan was wrong, I'm so sorry. You know, that would have been something. You know, I understand war is hell. I understand that. But no, we didn't get that. Staff Sergeant Taylor Hoover, Staff Sergeant Ryan Christian Knaus, Sergeant Nicole G., Sergeant Johanny Rosario Picardo, Corporal Humberto Sanchez, Corporal Hunter Lopez, Corporal William Deegan Page, Lance Corporal David Lee Espinosa, Lance Corporal Riley J. McCollum, Lance Corporal Dylan R. Marola, Lance Corporal Kareem M. Nakui, Lance Corporal Jared M. Schmitz, Corpsman Maxton W. Soviak. They deserve justice.
Good morning to all of you. I first want to start by saying thank you and acknowledging Congressman Issa and the rest of his staff and the various mayors sitting here on the stand. But most of all, I want to thank all of you for being here to listen to the hurt, the anger, the anguish that we feel for our children. My name is Darren Hoover. I'm the father of Marine Corps Staff Sergeant Darren Taylor Hoover. I'm his dad, but not the same, as we have different middle names. He's a man unto himself, a self-made man that left a hole in our families when he was taken from us by terrorists. He's left behind some pretty big shoes to fill, and if I'm being honest with you and with myself, they will never be filled. Not for lack of trying, as we strive every day to do, but that's the measure of the man he is and that he was raised to be. We miss him immensely, and time will never heal that wound. Kelly and I were blessed with Taylor, and as his parents, like all other parents, were given the sacred responsibility to protect and provide for his well-being. We were tasked with also teaching him about life. Now he's taught us so much more than we ever did with him. We raised him to know right from wrong. We raised him to be a patriot and to love this country that we are blessed to call home. We raised him to help others as they needed it or saw the need to do so, even if it seemed insignificant at the time. We never know the hearts that we're able to touch with just a kind word or a helping hand up. Taylor is the poster child for being a loving and caring human, and took that responsibility to a whole other level. This compassionate and caring man was always looking out for others, but especially his Marines. If someone came to him and asked him a question of him that he didn't know, he would research the answer so that he could give the correct information back, and also expected that from his Marines. This compassion and caring was put to paper by his lieutenant at the time of his death, Lieutenant Byrd, and is as follows. It's called the grown-ass man. What is my number one rule? Taylor would ask this question to his Marines at least once a week, and you could always count on it being asked on a Friday afternoon before the Marines were released for the weekend. And always without fail, Taylor would point to one of the Marines in the formation, and he would answer back, "Be a grown-ass man, Staff Sergeant." Taylor would reply, "Exactly." And with that, the Marines would go on and enjoy their weekend. It was part of our weekly rituals that we had, and this was always the last thing the guys were told before we left for the weekend or the week. Back on a Friday in February, we had a whole group of young Marines who had just joined our platoon a few days earlier. All of them were 18 or 19-year-olds and had just graduated high school approximately 8 months before that. When it came time for Taylor to ask his weekly question, he pointed to one of our brand new Marines and said, as he did every Friday, "What's my number one rule?" Lo and behold, this poor young kid did not know the answer, as this was his first Friday with the platoon. And as you can imagine, I don't know, Staff Sergeant. And this kid said this in a voice that was barely audible and full of fear as he looked down at the ground. At this point, everybody in the platoon is silent. and no one is really sure what is about to happen. Even the more senior Marines had a look of hesitation on their faces. You could see them trying to calculate what Taylor was going to do next. This was the first time this had ever happened, and I myself was pretty curious to see how this was going to turn out. Well, you know what? Today's your lucky day, said Taylor. We're going to give you the answer to this. Hey, Sergeant Tree, can you tell this young Marine what my number one rule is? Your number one rule is to be a grown-ass man, Staff Sergeant, said Sergeant Tree in a loud, booming voice, so that everyone, especially the new junior Marines, could be sure to hear. Exactly. Now I'll tell you what, I'll give you another chance, said Taylor to the now clearly flustered young Marine. What do you think I mean by that? And once again, in the most quiet voice that a human could possibly emit, this poor young kid goes, I don't know, Staff Sergeant. I figured that, said Taylor. So let me tell you. Being a grown-ass man means that you will always look out for the Marines that you see around you, because they will always look out for you. If you see someone needs help, go over and ask them what you can do to help them. If you need help with anything, you need to be mature enough to ask for help. Being a grown-ass man means that if you make a mistake, that you will own up to it and then work to correct it. It means that if you have to think twice about doing something, then you probably shouldn't do it. If you make a mistake, it's okay because no one is perfect. We will still stand by you and support you, but a grown-ass man learns from his mistakes. But understand this. You, as a grown-ass man, need to understand that there is no such thing as a mistake when it comes to morality. You are well aware of what things like lying or stealing are that are wrong, and those, in fact, are not mistakes. Those are conscious decisions that you, as a grown-ass man, are not allowed to make. Does that make sense? It does, Staff Sergeant, said this young Marine, though not in a quivering whisper as he'd been speaking, but in a tone that was filled with confidence and respect. Taylor was the big brother and the father figure that so many young Marines never had. A lot of them had come to us from broken homes or had been raised by their grandmothers or other family members. It wasn't that they hadn't been taught what was right from wrong. It was that some of them had just never had a father figure that truly cared for them. Taylor was exactly that person. There was never a time when he was not acting in a way that should not be emulated. He would never hesitate to pull a Marine, regardless of rank, and pull them to the side and ask him how things were going if he had the slightest inclination that there was something bothering him. There are so many young men that Taylor took the time to mentor, to coach, to listen to, when he saw that they were going through something or just needed someone to confide in. And I can say with the fullest confidence that there are countless young men who have become not just better Marines, but better fathers, husbands, sons, and friends because of the influence that he had on them. The loss of Taylor is a void that simply cannot be filled. I want to assure everyone that Taylor will forever live on, and that his impact will live on through those that he considered his brothers. When new Marines check in, they will hear the stories, not on just his heroic actions, but they will come to embody the values that he stood for. And just like those he directly led, they will as well go on to better men because of it. Now, as I said in the beginning, that that his mother and I took the responsibility for Taylor's safety and his well-being. And in that day in September, we transferred that responsibility to the Marine Corps, the Department of Defense, and the others in the various administration since he joined the Marine Corps 11 years before his death. The most recent administration, Department of Defense and the Marine Corps, did not uphold their end of that contract. I know there are those that will say that Taylor and his brothers in arms signed on the dotted line and knew the consequences that could occur, as we have been at war for 20 years. And they would be correct. But this didn't need to happen in the manner that it did. And for those who had power over our military, know that they made a conscious decision that led to the chaotic and frantic withdrawal from Afghanistan. For the Secretary of Defense, General Austin, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Milley, to say that they're satisfied with the withdrawal of our troops is nothing short of disgusting and ignorant. Retired Marine Corps General McKenzie can be included in this as well, as these were his Marines, and he should have known better. With all of these generals having approximately 90 years of experience combined, and to come up with the plan that they attempted to carry out is despicable. And to say to Congress that they thought it was a good withdrawal are sorely, sorely mistaken. Then to have individuals like John Kirby come in and say that he did not see from the chaos from his perch is both tone deaf and ignorant. We've all seen the pictures and the videos as he was speaking. Now to the Secretary of State. Our kids were not trained extensively on what to look for when looking for the green cards, the passports, and the other pieces of paper that were needed to get out of that country, and to assist our Americans that were there, our allies. The Afghans, which just wanted to get out and a new life out from under the Taliban rule. To have the ambassador to Afghanistan changed out midway through all of this should be a huge red flag. Why was that done? Because the prior ambassador was not on board with the decisions being made and the way it was being handled? If that's the case, then something needs to be done. In closing, I'm calling out Secretary Blinken, Secretary Austin, General Milley, General McKenzie, Lieutenant Colonel Whitehead, who could not give the order to the snipers to take out the bomber before he detonated his vest, and ultimately the President. Do what our son did. Be a grown-ass man. Admit to your mistakes. Learn from them so that this doesn't happen ever again. You all need to resign immediately. Our sons and daughters have more integrity in their little toes than every one of them combined. You owe it to our families here today, to the other Gold and Silver Star families that have gone before, and most of all to the veterans who have given so much for this country so that we have the freedoms that we enjoy today. Thank you.
Thank you. Christy, you want to go next?
Good morning. My name is Christy Shamblin, and I'm proud to be Sergeant Nicole G's mom-in-law. Her mama, Becky Herrera, would be here today, but she unfortunately passed before Nicole, and I like to think that she was waiting for her in heaven. I'm not a speaker, and this is not my comfort zone, so please be patient with me. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Sorry. I'd like to thank Congressman Issa and you all for being here today. It's really important and it means so very much to us. Thank you. As I thought about what I could say today, I thought of Nicole and the bright light that she brought to our lives. She was known for being a positive and encouraging person to so many people in her life. She was ambitious, driven, caring, and she was a badass Marine. That's right. One of my favorite memories of Nicole includes the picture that was taken of her just days before her murder in Afghanistan. She's holding an infant, and she posted with that, "I love my job." She's in the middle of the most horrific conditions I've ever witnessed in my life, and she is proudly serving her country and loving her job, doing 100%. She held nothing back. She strived to be the best she could, and she encouraged everybody in her life to do the same in their own way. My son was an active duty Marine at the time of her death also. They were a Marine couple stationed at Lejeune in North Carolina. I'm very proud of my son. As God has seen fit sometimes in my life, He put us together on the day He was notified. And we left the next day to Dover Air Force Base for what I now know is called a dignified transfer. I can't even begin to piece together the words that would convey to you the devastation that her murder has brought to our family. When your child is murdered, you feel like there is no justice, and you question your very existence. I'm happy to tell you that success with the support of the Marine Corps and mental health professionals does come in small doses, and you gain small footings every day to make a new chapter in your life. We're grateful, so very grateful for people like yourselves and the Americans who want to hear our children's stories. Because we don't get to make new memories with our children. All we have is our memories. All we have is the stories that we get to share with you guys. We're grateful for the support of people like Congressman Issa and several other congressmen who have been taking us and really allowing us to have our voices heard and to make it better for both our active duty service members, our veterans, and the next families that will have to welcome their children home in a casket draped with a flag. It will happen again. It is the cost of the greatest country on earth. And it's the cost of our freedoms. And we want to make sure that while we can't bring our children back, the next ones will be treated with more respect. the respect that they earned by dying for our country. Helping for a positive change is a silver lining for our family. When our leaders, including the Secretary of Defense and our Commander-in-Chief, call this evacuation a success, as if there should be celebration, it is like a knife in the heart for our families and for the people who came back and for every service member that served over this 20-year war. I live every single day knowing that these deaths were preventable. My daughter could be with us today. And that wasn't just one decision, it was many decisions. Many times over it could have been stopped. So to call it a success is an ultimate disrespect for the very people that deserve every ounce of respect that we can give them. That day, there were 13 avoidable deaths of our service members, 30 plus critically wounded warriors who have our hearts. These young men and women came back bigger patriots than they left. I don't know how that's possible, and I admire them from the bottom of my heart. We left thousands of allies behind. Billions of dollars in resources for them to use against us. This was not a success. And doing the same thing and expecting different results is the definition of insanity. What we're asking for is to stop the insanity and make it better for the next group. Thank you.
Hello. I'm completely out of my wheelhouse. And that's my son right there between the American flag and the Marine flag. His name was Kareem M. Nakui. I just got this. I don't know how to work it.
To do that, you'll need to be online.
There we go. Okay, I would like to thank God, our Creator. I want to thank Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit. And Father God, may you see fit to bless our country so we may honor and glorify your name. I'd also like to thank Congressman Issa for listening to our story, for leading this charge. We are all deeply thankful to you and your staff, and to the city of Escondido. One of President Donald J. Trump's campaign promises was the end to war in Afghanistan. I think he recognized as he saw the corruptness of the Afghan government and the Afghan National Security Forces. Colonel Christopher Kolenda said, quote, "I was disgusted knowing that the Afghan military commanders were creating ghost soldiers so they could take their pay, that they were selling their soldiers food, fuel, and ammunition on the black market as part of the kleptocracy that had become the Afghan government," end quote. I'm sure that the president could see that the puppet government would not be able to assure the one thing that he wanted, American soldiers to stop being killed. So he negotiated with the Taliban the Doha Agreement, which was categorized as a good deal by Colonel Kimrich. And for 18 months, there were no American casualties. In the House of Foreign Affairs Subcommittee, Congressman Crow asked of Colonel Kolenda if after that agreement was signed, did the Taliban stop attacking U.S. soldiers? in which he replied, yes. Congressman Issa asked Colonel Krumich if he saw the actions in the last 9 months of the Trump administration as having any cause to the loss of the 13 soldiers' lives, in which Krumich stated, not during the Trump administration. And there was ample time in the Biden administration to change the course that led to the August 26 attack. When Congressman Crow asked Colonel Seth Krumich if the U.S. forces had not left in August of 2021, would the Taliban had resumed combat operations against the U.S. soldiers? He said, and I quote, I believe that if we had not pulled out by that date, they would have had a hard time once the winter started to be able to actually execute that, which would have given the Afghan government the time and the space to get their feet set to fight back, end quote. Krumich also spoke of the 3 strategic objectives laid out by the Biden administration, in which he said, we were not successful, and the senior decision makers had selective intelligence blindness, and that administrations controlled how we withdrew and when we withdrew. Congressman McCall stated, quote, I was there. We were there for the briefings from state, from DOD, and from the IC, and for months President Biden ignored warning from his own generals and his own intelligence community and by bipartisan members of Congress about what happened on the ground, end quote. He classified the president as having, quote, a blind eye. And during the first 2 months of President Biden's administration, he was too busy reversing as many Trump policies as he could that he neglected to meet the April deadline. On April 14th, President Biden came out and said that he has negotiated an extension and that he was ending the 20-year war in Afghanistan to be completed by September 11th. And as he pointed out, and as pointed out by Congressman Mass, Jen Psaki stated, quote, the president is the ultimate decision maker, that he was the decision maker who chose to draw the date of September 11th. He was the decision maker who pulled out the people with the guns out before the people with the guns, before the people with the gun, before the people without the guns. The decision maker who collapsed the operations to HKIA Airport, it was Joe Biden, the ultimate decision maker, and that none of these decisions were in the Doha Agreement, end quote. Congressman Waltz asked Krumich, did President Biden ignore the advice of 3 4-star generals, in which he replied, yes. Well, of course he did. There are interviews in which he prided himself on being tough with generals, and that Afghanistan had a diplomatic solution, not a military solution, and this explains why the state chose HKIA instead of Bagram. That is why they left only 113 men. Colonel Sergeant Major said, quote, the defensibility of Bagram was exponentially greater, end quote, and that 2,000 soldiers can completely man Bagram, and 2,500 soldiers were left in country when President Trump left office. He understood that some of the embassy felt that the Taliban would not advance and that a NEO would not be necessary. June 14th, he was given an order to close Bagram by July 4th, 2021. HKIA was to remain open as a quick reaction force to the embassy, which was 4 miles away. All talks of conducting a NEO ceased, which was against the law. Colonel Sergeant Major Smith said that he closed Bagram on July 2nd, and the Taliban controlled 50% of Afghanistan, with 113 American soldiers left in country from 10th Mountain Division. Congressman Waltz also stated that not a single official has resigned, been relieved, been court-martialed, or even laterally transferred. My life and that of my family's has been on pause since the early morning of August 26, 2021. The difference between the minutes of my life before that day and the minutes that pass after that day are contrasted drastically. The smells of the season, a certain song, an image, a picture, brings back the image and the images and the feelings, the pain and anxiety. The thing that upsets me most is that he exploded the most precious thing that a child learns from his parent, trust. Kareem enlisted and stood on that wall because he associated his government in the likeness of his parents. And the protection and love he witnessed growing up, he associated and compared to his government. My son needed a commander-in-chief who cared solely about his life, a commander-in-chief who, when sent a picture to the Taliban leaders whose Taliban leader's house and asked him, "Why do you send me a picture of my house?" Replied, "You have to figure that out, Abdul." Instead, his commander-in-chief chose to use him as a pawn so he could meet his September 11th deadline and get the optics he wanted, and never honor my son or his brothers and sisters for their sacrifice for his picture. There was something I'd like to do with Kareem. When he would leave to go... Sorry. When he would leave to go back to Camp Pendleton, he would tell me, "Goodbye, I love you." I would be on the other end of the house, far away, and I would wait to hear the door creak because of the hinge, the front door. And as soon as I heard that, I would yell as loud as I could his name, "Kareem!" And this was to pay homage to every father-son movie ever made. You know, I would yell, and in his little voice, "Yeah." And I'd be like, "Avenge me!" You know? And I would come and look at him, and he'd have the biggest smile. And now all I hear is him and his soft voice, "Avenge me." Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Cheryl Rex. I am the mother of Lance Corporal Dylan Marola. I want to thank Congressman Issa and all the dignitaries that are present today so that I may have this opportunity to speak publicly for the first time since the botched and chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan, which took the life of my son and 12 other service members, 170 Afghan civilians, and left hundreds wounded. I am seeking answers to my many questions that have gone unanswered since August 26, 2021. Dylan was on his first deployment to Jordan when the withdrawal from Afghanistan began. That quickly turned into an evacuation of our Afghan allies and civilians, when he and his battalion were then redirected to assist in this process. My son was only 20 years old. It begins with the moment when I saw 2 uniformed Marines awaiting my arrival to inform me that my son had been identified as one of the 13 service members that had been killed at Abbey Gate during Operation Freedom Sentinel, also known as Operation Enduring Freedom. I was told to pack an overnight bag and be ready to go to Delaware for a dignified transfer to receive my son's body. Myself and the other families of our 13 were waiting for the plane arrival to the United States. When Joe Biden, our elected president, entered the room, when he approached me, his words to me were, my wife Jill and I know how you feel. We lost our son as well and brought him home in a flag-draped coffin." My heart started beating faster, and I started shaking, knowing that their son died from cancer and they were able to be by his side. Also wondering how someone could honestly, be so heartless to say he knew how I felt a little over 24 hours and learning of my son's death. After this encounter, I have never had any personal correspondence, nor has my son been honored or his name spoken by this commander-in-chief or his administration on what I feel is because of their failures and poor planning to exit our troops from Afghanistan. I returned home, and the following days, I started to receive phone calls from Dylan's commanding officers, which leads me to a conversation I had that stated, "Ma'am, we decided to hold Abbey Gate open for just 1 more hour in hopes to save a few more lives, knowing that the imminent attack was approaching the gate." That statement is ingrained inside my brain, knowing that if they had closed the gate, my son would be alive today. I have wondered who gave that order to hold that gate open for one more hour, and for whom. Within the following weeks, Dillon's battalion began returning to Camp Pendleton, is when Marines had the opportunity to reach out to the families. I was very fortunate that I lived close enough to the base that several of the Marines came to visit me and began telling me their stories. Every story being told coincided that Abbey Gate was ambushed and was a complex attack, not just a single suicide bombing, which was being reported on news outlets. I had spent the first couple of weeks wondering if my son's remains were not going to be intact, to learning that my son had suffered injuries and had been medically treated and his body was viewable. Whatever ounce of comfort that may have brought me, I knew I would be able to see my son one last time. I laid Dillon to rest, witnessing thousands of people from across our country offering their condolences and support, and again, nothing was brought forth from anyone in our current administration. The anger I held inside on how our 13 kids were not being recognized nationally was becoming prominent. How could so many people pay their respects, but nothing at all from the President of the United States on something he had conducted? My social media account started receiving little to no attention, and my son's name seemed to be slowly not being recognized. I knew then that I was being targeted and shut down publicly by media outlets. I could hardly search anything that had to do with Afghanistan when just a month ago, our situation was everywhere. How could a worldwide event, quoted the largest evacuation in American history, just disappear? When failures are made, those who are involved in those failures want it to be forgotten. And that's what I felt was happening by our current leadership. Those Marines who had poured their hearts out to me and had been by my side grieving over their experiences, their stories were beginning to change. I knew they were being told they couldn't speak about their experiences any longer. On January 19th, 2022, a colonel and his JAG briefed me on the after-action report of what was supposed to be the truths and facts of what happened at Abbey Gate. During this brief, it was explained to me where my son's location had been during the time of the attack, and also his wounds in accordance with his autopsy report. That is when I personally confirmed to myself that everything, even the way my son died, was being covered up. I was being given false information. While this colonel was describing Dillon's wounds, he was describing the report as intended towards a right-handed person. My son's personal trait was that he was left-handed. So when I questioned how could my son obtain wounds on the opposite side of his body that he was illustrating, he couldn't respond, leading the conversation to the JAG to change the subject. They continued into showing me drone footage that ultimately they claimed had a 3-minute unexplainable lapse. This colonel told me, "Ma'am, you wouldn't want to see it anyways." I had already seen my son's lifeless body and laid him to rest. Who was this colonel to make a decision what I was capable of watching? Afghanistan was no longer being spoken about, and nothing seemed to be available anymore while I was continuing my search for answers. I was starting to feel defeated as to not being able to find anything. I felt I needed to find some kind of proof that would show that the people, these Marines, were not lying about their stories and possibly bring some acknowledgement back into the public eye. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into a couple of months. As the 1-year mark approached, I knew in my heart that my son and our 13 were not going to be honored or spoken more than just a small new community that we were circulating in. But in my head, I kept thinking, maybe, just maybe, their names would be spoken on national TV or even just anything to honor their sacrifices, and people would remember them. As a mother of 2 Marines, I hold a different perspective of honor. It wouldn't have taken much effort to say their names and hold a moment of silence on this date. I wasn't surprised one bit when nothing was said for them. Every day I had just hoped and prayed that people wouldn't forget this withdrawal, being that U.S. troops had spent the past 20 years defending and protecting the Afghan civilians. I was fighting an endless battle without being heard. From zero honor or respect from our current administration, being publicly removed, to lies and cover-ups over facts and truths that there was zero accountability and no real evidence provided, or any honest information was being given to me. Months following, a couple of veteran Marines contacted me asking if I knew about the upcoming congressional hearings that would start to take place. I started to think, is this true? Maybe we are able to start getting answers to some of my questions on my son's death. I am extremely grateful to those Marines telling their stories, which have all been everything I had been told from the very beginning. I feel with our combined efforts and our commitment to exposing what was really happening in Afghanistan, maybe I can finally get some truths about my son's death, and the American people would see the failures that actually occurred. I feel I deserve real answers, real truths, real facts, and someone to be held accountable for the failures that occurred that took my son's life. I am here now with those same hopes that you are willing to stand by my side and help me get those truths and answers I've been looking for almost 2 years. The impact of tragedy is painful. The impact of losing your child in a manner that could have been prevented and led people who seem to not have any sympathy for human lives is anger, frustration, disappointment, mental stress, physical pain, and more than just a broken heart that cannot be fixed. I hope one day as a mother I can understand why my son was chosen to leave this earth. Behind every heart is a hero. Behind every hero is a story. Behind every story reveals what they endured for you, for me, and for all mankind. Thank you for allowing me to share just a glimpse of what I have been holding inside my heart since that date of August 26, 2021, as the day I lost my son, Lance Corporal Dylan Marola, because legends live forever and their stories will always be told. Can I go without this?
My gosh, I'm shaking already. Sorry. Good morning, everyone. I'm gonna thank Congressman and all of you guys for being here, for opening this place for us to talk and express ourselves and our broken hearts to you and to our community. My name is Coro Bursano. I am the mother of Corporal Humberto Sanchez. Right there. I always call him my green eye boy. We're Hispanics, Mexicans, but he has green eyes. Don't ask me where, because I don't know. They said it was my grandma. I didn't meet my grandma, so funny story, my green eye boy. let's just start 711 days ago, since I received a knock on my door in the middle of the night. 711 days of a broken heart, trying to glue my family together, learning how to survive our new lives. First, we start minute by minute. Then we learn how to live day by day. Then month by month. And I'm gonna tell you something, it hasn't been easy. We struggle a lot. All this time, I asked myself, what if I didn't sign those papers to let him go at the age of 17? Why I did not hug him longer the last day I saw him? The last time I spoke with him was on the phone on August 23rd. I was fighting with him, fighting for him to help and save more innocent women and children. Why, instead of pushing him to help save more Black people, I did not tell him that I love him and I was so proud of him? Why didn't make sure he knows how much I love him? The truth is, I raised a loving, protector, and caring human being. The kind of person that will give his life for the ones he loved. And that is something that I am really proud of. My son loved this country as much as he loved his family. I expected the government to love my son as much as I do, to protect him, just like I protect him for the first 17 years of his life. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. They failed to protect not just my son, but 12 of his brothers and sisters that day. They failed to protect countless Afghans who died that day too. The commander-in-chief failed on the oath he took when he entered this country's executive system to protect our country from foreign and domestic enemies. He failed everybody. Everyone asked me, what can I do? What can I do for your family? Every single person that they end over, every single people that I don't even remember faces. They're like, what can we do for you? Here's my card, here's my number. Tell me, what do you want me to do? I never have an answer for that. But today I can tell you, I want answers. I want the truth. I want to go to sleep knowing my son did not die on vain. I want to know that this type of failure will not repeat itself again. 22 service members taking their own lives every day. How many more lives will be lost after this catastrophic evacuation? Last time I knew, there were 7 service members from that day in Kabul that took their own lives. And who cares? Nobody cares. Nothing is public. Nobody knows. How many more need to struggle because they cannot talk? They got told, whatever you see, whatever you think you saw, didn't happen. They cannot even talk to us. And that, it's a shame. How many more parents have to go through this nightmare if we don't do anything with this administration? We need to get to the bottom of this and find out the root of this failure. We need to implement laws to protect our Marine soldiers and sailors. I am tired of hearing people tell me, what can I do? The time to act is now. Make sure history does not repeat itself. The last day I see my son, it was March of 2021. He was leaving for his last deployment in the Jordan. And I remember, like it was yesterday, he's standing outside the door and he hugged me and he said, Mom, if I don't come back. And I said, shut up, you're gonna come back. And then he said, no, Mom, if I don't come back, I want you to keep telling my story. And you know what? His story did not end on August 26, 2021. I will fight until my last breath to get to the truth. I promise this to my kid, and I will do it. Thank you.
My name is Alicia Lopez. And I'm the proud mother of United States Marine Corps Corporal Hunter Lopez. I would first like to start off by speaking of my son. Hunter has been described as a Marine's Marine. He knew he had to be prepared physically, mentally, and tactically. He invested countless hours working out, reading military history, listening to tactical podcasts. He invested hours upon hours at the range on his own time and bought himself the best gear to use. He would not settle for second best. He did all of this without leaving others behind or to fend for themselves. I would venture to say that in addition to service to the country, after having trained, lived, and known his close Marine friends for many years, Hunter also dedicated to protecting and looking out for the well-being of his fellow Marines. Second, I would like to thank everyone who has made this endeavor possible and given all our families a voice. This is an important process for us, for our family, and I believe there's more that needs to be disclosed, not only to the families of the fallen, but to all the veterans who served in Afghanistan and to the American public. To say it's time to move on and there's nothing more to be said as to the planning and the execution of how our country wrapped a 2-decade war is an insult to all of us. Some may ask why we are just coming forward now. And although there is no singular answer, reasons include patience for the system to work. The military asked we allow them time to gather information, evidence, time to conduct interviews, and generally find answers to questions my family had. Another reason is faith that the right thing would be done, and the answers to tough questions we had would be answered. Some answers were provided. However, as time went on, the answers provided were overshadowed by new information and testimony, only sparking more questions, doubts, and concerns. The reality is that items of concern to my family, and perhaps to all of us, can be answered by a true account of who made decisions, who did or did not What advice was provided, and why or why not was it not followed? I have no illusion that anyone will be prosecuted or terminated for ignoring intelligence or making bad decisions, not even for lying to all our Gold Star families. This outcome is sad, but it is what we have to come to expect from a system that would prefer to hold secrets for decades and beyond until someone finally has the decency to unseal classified information that would bring solace to grieving families and answers to so many questions and concerns. It is it's unfortunate, and really it's sad. Our system is quick to identify those at fault in faraway countries. But yet we are challenged to evaluate ourselves. We shy away from compromising careers of high-ranking officials, book deals, and future lucrative public speaking engagements. The reality is, if fault was to be found in someone who wore fatigues to work instead of a suit, they would be on trial long ago. If blame was cast on a young Marine who carried a rifle to defend his country and fellow Marines, that Marine's name would be on the evening news and media camped outside the front of his or her home. Mistakes were made, without a doubt. My request is that those mistakes are owned up to, that my family and the other Gold Star families hear the truth, and that we are made aware of who is accountable. We do not want a partial truth or truth told in a book release or when information is declassified 20, 30, or 40 years from now. As Americans, we want this truth. As Gold Star families, we deserve the truth. We deserved it 2 years ago, and we definitely deserve it today. I ask that our children are honored, those injured, and those that made it home from HKIA. That they be honored by speaking the truth. Staff Sergeant Taylor Hoover, Sergeant Nicole G., Sergeant Johanny Pichardo, Staff Sergeant Ryan Naus, Corporal Digan Page, Corporal Humberto Sanchez, Corporal Hunter Lopez, Hospital Corpsman Maxton Soviak, Lance Corporal Kareem Nakui, Lance Corporal Dylan Marola, Lance Corporal Jared Schmidt, Lance Corporal David Espinoza, Lance Corporal Riley McCullum.
This brings to a close the statements for today of the families of the fallen. I said for today because their story cannot end today. In 1792, George Washington impaneled the first congressional investigation of a failed battle. It is not new for there to be military mistakes. It is not new. But it is, in fact, a tradition that investigations don't end until every question has been answered. And even though we spent a little over an hour here today with these families, we could have spent 2 or 3 or 4 hours and not heard all the questions they have. Others have told us of things like a bullet found inside their loved one, when in fact we were told it was a bomb, and they have evidence. Others have asked, I got my son's phone back, but the SIM card containing those pictures, those selfies, had been removed. Can I have it back? There are many, many questions unasked or unspoken today that have been asked that we will get to the bottom of. So for the families who came so far and said what they said here today, thank you. For those in attendance as witnesses, on behalf of all of them, all of us have an obligation to retell their stories, to not let it fade until every question has been answered. That's not one member of Congress, that's every American's obligation. So again, you'll hear thank you for your sacrifice. It's not a sacrifice you asked for. It may well have been a sacrifice that we could have avoided. But thank you, and thank your loved ones, and thank every military person who knowingly signs up to go in harm's way, knowing that what happened to your children, your loved ones, could happen to them every day. This is not the end, but it is the end for today. We stand adjourned.